You're listening to The Dispatch from WPRB News. This week, we're taking a look at election 2008, and our first report covers the changes, largely generational, in the politics of Cuban Americans in the all-important battleground state of Florida. Although once considered a solid Republican constituency, the men and women of Little Havana, particularly the younger voters, are taking a new look at both candidates. WPRB's Naomi reports.
Yellow caution tape surrounds an auditorium in Miami. Hundreds of people are getting their citizenship. The police say no one can approach the line of new Americans until their citizenship ceremony ends. Madeline Rodriguez Ortega has been at an Obama campaign table since 7 a.m. One McCain volunteer has a loudspeaker ready to attract people to his booth just a few yards away. Other groups like the NAACP and Democracia USA also waited to approach the new Americans. A vendor has leather covers ready to sell for their new diplomas, and when the police give the nod, they all scramble for a piece of the new American pie. But Madeline is hopeful that her Cuban American community will support her candidate in the fall.
One of my favorite things that I've seen is Cuban Americans, younger Cuban Americans with the traditional guayaberas on, and there's a logo on them that says, translated into English is Democrat, so and what? Which in Spanish is Demócrata y qué? Like, what are you going to do about it? You know, it's like they're out, you know, it's, there's no hiding anymore or feeling any guilt or any kind of turmoil.
Data from Zogby International supports her. Cubans under 30 in South Florida are 50% more likely to vote for Barack Obama than older voters in their community. Fritz Wenzel is the director of communication at Zogby, an independent research firm. He says young voters are more likely to vote like their non-Cuban peers because they've never lived in Cuba.
What we've seen in the Cuban community of South Florida over the last 4 years is a small movement from the Republican Party to the Democratic Party.
According to the 2000 census, 34% of the Miami population is Cuban, but historical backlash has taught the Democrats not to count on their vote. Cuban Americans still blame the Kennedy administration for the Bay of Pigs fiasco, when the U.S. government failed to overthrow the Castro regime. For the decades since, Miami Cuban politics has been diehard Republican. Fernand Armandi is the vice president of a South Florida research firm that has worked for the Obama and Clinton campaigns. He says a shift in Cuban American politics is definitely noticeable.
Well, there is a perception that many Cubans are re-examining their own attitudes towards the political parties, whereas Miami was very much seen as a one-party town when it came to the Cuban community. That now there's evidence of people either switching parties or registering as Democrats for the first time.
He says even though McCain still has the lead over Obama, the margin is smaller than what Bush had over Kerry in 2004. That margin was so small, Cuban Americans could have easily been the ones to give Bush his second term. But Cuban American Democrats are in the minority.
What that tells me is that there are Cubans who don't necessarily still feel comfortable with the Democratic Party. You're seeing the Cubans who don't necessarily feel comfortable within the Republican Party register as independent.
One litmus test for the general Cuban American electorate are congressional races. Take, for example, the one between Republican incumbent Mario Diaz-Balart and Democrat Joe Garcia. They are both vying for the opportunity to represent a heavily Cuban population in the largest district in Florida. Diaz-Balart's reign for 3 terms has largely been credited to a hardline stance on Cuban policy. But Garcia thinks that stance is giving way to a more pragmatic view on Cuba.
There is no question that part of the absurdity of the debate in Cuba is that to some degree it's dominated by the first generation and their children.
Democrats like Joe Garcia and Barack Obama are hoping to capture the votes of Cuban moderates. But the vast majority of Cuban American voters are like 80-year-old Rene Perez. For him, the choice between the two parties has always been clear.
Are you voting for McCain?
Of course. I'm Republican. I'm Cuban first. I'm Republican in the second time, you know. There are, of course, some people that are not thinking like me, are thinking in the other side.
His 47-year-old son, Tony, is one of those people. He's registered as an independent, but has mostly voted for Republicans. But this time around, he's optimistic about a Democratic president.
I think Obama is going to win the elections because he represents a new generation, a generation that is beyond prejudice, a generation that wants to fix the problems of this country. I think the good old boys network game is over.
Tony says keeping up with politics is a Perez family tradition. They can often be seen getting into heated arguments over the day's news. But sometimes the teasing's a little more lighthearted.
No. I say, hey, when Obama lose, I will be laughing. And he say, when McCain lose, I will be laughing. Oh, I will be laughing of you. Okay, my son.
Until then, all they can do is wait. But November can't come soon enough. I'm Naomi Nix for WPRB.